and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 119. And the title of this episode is You'll Be Watched, Recorded, and Tracked During the Economic Collapse. And we see that the market is in a positive, on the positive side. We're at 15,500 or so. Gold has moved up a little bit by $15, staying around the 1,300 mark. And the Asian markets were down, Europe was down, and all eyes on the U.S. stock market because that's where they want you looking. They don't want you looking anywhere else. But let's get into the economic collapse news. And we're going to start off with Cyprus. What's happening there is deposits in the banks are at an all-time low. They are basically non-existent because what's happening is they have capital controls in effect. It's been over 100 days, and nobody can open an account. You still can't take that much money out, and no one in their right mind, foreign investors or people who are in Cyprus, are going to put money into these banks because the government and the IMF and the European community and the central bankers have proven that if you put money in there, we're going to take it from you. So who in their right mind would do that? So what they're seeing is that the Central Bank of Cyprus reported that not only did local deposits drop to a level not seen in 2007, plunging at the second fastest absolute amount in history, but declined at the fastest rate ever. And this is what's this situation right here is going to hurt Cyprus even more. And again, the central bankers do not care about that. They want the governments to suffer. They want the governments to be put into more debt. They want the people to be out of work because what do these central bankers want? They want to own the natural resources of each country. That is what they're looking to do. And in Greece, what's happening there is the unemployment is very high. And people can't find work. About 23% don't earn enough to stay above the poverty line, and people are fleeing Greece looking for work elsewhere. And you know, why would these people stay in Greece? I mean, for the Greek government to get a bailout from the EU, they have to lay off approximately 25,000 employees from the government. I think 12,500 right now, and then down the line they have it split up around another 12,500 to put themselves into more debt. And what that means is there's going to be more people looking for work. So this is not going to help the situation, and the people are looking at this and saying, we need to get out of here and go someplace else where we can actually make money and live and get out of this poverty that we're in. Now, there was an article on Zero Hedge where it said that whenever the annual change in the core capex, also known as the non-defense capital goods, excluding aircraft shipments, goes negative, the U.S. has traditionally entered a recession, and the number is around positive 0.8% and declining fast. And you know, if we look back in January, it was around 14, and now it has dropped all the way to 0.8. And this looks like we are headed for a recession / depression, because you have to remember the U.S. Fed is holding about $3.5 trillion in securities, and it's increasing at a pace of $85 billion per month. They're buying pretty much half of it in toxic real estate, and the other half they're buying treasury bonds because nobody else will purchase the treasury bonds at this point. Now, to keep the housing bubble alive, what the regulators are planning to do, they are planning to decrease the amount that people have to put down on a mortgage down to around 5% or so, or even lower. And where most people, and this is what happened back in 2005 to 2008, where people had no money down, 5%, they were taking out arms and not worrying about fixing in to the new interest rate until maybe 5 years later, 3 years later. And this pretty much caused a lot of the problems, along with what the banks were doing with the subprime. And and we're starting the same exact pattern again. And what the central bank and the Fed are trying to do is they're trying to keep the housing market afloat, because you have to remember, mortgage rates are going up. When mortgage rates going up, people who normally can afford a house, it pushes them out of the market, because now they need to come up with more money for their monthly payments because the interest rate is higher. They do not have the down payment, so they were getting no down payment loans, or the 5% loans. And now as the interest rates go up, it kind of pushes them out of the market, and they're trying to bring people back, and they're having a very difficult time keeping the real estate bubble inflating. Now, D.R. Horton, which is a home builder, their stocks are down about 4%, and this goes on to say, despite any and every talking head reassurance that rising mortgage rates won't impact the awesomeness of the housing recovery, it seems the actual home builders have a different view. Home builders shocked and disturbed by rate jump. D.R. Horton's CEO says disappointed rates rose so violently. D.R. Horton CEO says traffic count has slowed since rate rise. So even the home builders are reporting that their traffic for people coming in purchasing homes has declined. We have seen mortgage applications plunge. We've seen more people moving into ARMs instead because the interest is much lower. And it seems like we're heading into this same exact repeat of prior to 2008 and the crash. The only difference this time is, again, the Fed is purchasing the 40 to 45 billion of mortgage-backed securities, the toxic mortgage-backed securities, plus the number of foreclosures still on the banks is very high, and the amount of people who are unemployed, underemployed, do not own a home now, cannot purchase a home now because they were foreclosed on, they lost their home, they lost their job, and now they're renting. So we have a very, very different situation this time. Now, under Obama, more people have gotten food stamps than jobs. And this goes on to say that during Obama administration has created around 7.2 million jobs over the years, and more than 32 million Americans were receiving assistance from the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program in January of 2009, and this was reported in the Washington Times. However, by this April, the number has grown to almost 48 million people. That's 16 million Americans, more than twice as many that got jobs. And, that is just unbelievable and ridiculous that this is how this economy is going. And from what we're seeing, not what the stock market is showing, from the real everyday person who's living out in the real world, we can see that the economy is not doing well. In Europe, they are seeing, this is why Cyprus is still having problems, Greece is still having problems, Italy is still having problems. I know there was a report saying that the unemployment in Spain is getting much better. It's at now 26%. 26 unemployment. The youth unemployment between 50 and 60%. Where is this getting better? What, that it came down a couple points? Yeah, but you're going to find out there's going to be adjustments because they included part-time work. It's always manipulated. It's always to make you think everything is getting better. But I'm sorry, when something's at 26% and it fell from whatever it was, 27%, to me, it's at 26%. And what happens next month when it's at 26.5%? Then you'll never see that story again, and it'll just fall off the news, and no one will ever show that again. But if it went from 27% down to 8%, all right, now we're talking. But don't give me that things are getting better when it comes down a half a percentage or 1%, and then they'll make their adjustments, and they'll say, oh, it was because it was, during this period of time, we're counting two people getting two part-time jobs, and this is what always happens, and we will find out what happens later on. Now, since since Detroit has declared bankruptcy, and it looks like the bankruptcy is going through, there are a lot of homes in Detroit that are being gobbled up by the Chinese. And this goes on to say specifically bargain hunting Chinese investors. Since the bankruptcy was announced, Caroline Chen, a real estate broker in Troy, Michigan, says she's received tons of calls from people in mainland China. I had people calling and saying, I'm serious. I want to buy 100 to 200 properties. Noting that one of her colleagues recently sold 30 properties to a Chinese buyer. And they are just coming in, they have the money, and they are just purchasing all of these homes. Now, talking about China, China's yuan set to become global reserve currency with backed by gold. And the recent media reports in China and Russia suggest that China is continuing to consider backing the yuan with gold. And according to media reports, the People's Bank of China is considering phasing out the dollar as their reference currency or peg for the yuan and start to using gold as their reference point. Besides being an important financial and geopolitical move, it would also be a symbolic act intended to show the U.S. and the world that they are capable of taking the risk associated with a departure from the dollar standard. With gold now traded in the yuan, it appears to be only a matter of time before oil is traded in yuan, thereby positioning the yuan as the petro-yuan and a rival to the petrodollar as the global reserve currency. And the central bankers and the United States government realize this. They know what's going on. And this is why when you hear about cyber attacks, they say that they're all pretty much, it used to be other countries, but now it's been completely just China, that they're coming from China. And I said this before, when you're doing any type of cyber attack, you can only get the IP from the last attack. A smart hacker, a smart cyber attacker, will bounce the attack off of many servers and then completely direct it towards the goal by using the last server. So the last server that was used is in China. Where it originated, they don't know. And that's all they know. It could come from the United States. And they could be bouncing it all around the world and eventually bounce it off China to be the last one. And that's what everyone is reporting. And by saying that China is the country that is doing the cyber attack, that is attacking our infrastructure, that is attacking our banks, again, Panetta, the DHS, Janet Napolitano, the government has says any attack, any cyber attack is an act of war. It is like a cyber Pearl Harbor. And this is what we are seeing, and this is what they are building up to. Okay, let's move on here. Now, the pacifist Japan no more. Japan is taking the stance that they will not be pacifist, that if something happens, they will push forward into going and protecting and going into war. And what this says is that Japanese leadership is moving further away from the pacifist constitution imposed on Tokyo by the American occupation administration over a half a century ago. The last time Tokyo updated its national defense program guidelines was in 2010. The U.S. drafted Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution prohibits the very possibility for Japan to wage war and have its own modern army. Despite that, today Japan boasts one of the best armies in Asia. Japanese servicemen have vast real warfare experience and have been taking part in all the conflicts started by the U.S. in the past 2 decades. And the potential threat Japan might face at the moment come from Asian continent. China not only has the world's largest army, but has been dramatically modernizing its military forces over the last decade. And to deal with all this and their territorial dispute over the remote island, Japan reportedly plans to establish a Marines task force. Purchase of unmanned surveillance drones is also planned to monitor the country's borders. And we can see that Japan is preparing and they are getting ready for this war. China is preparing and getting ready for this war. And who is pushing this war? Well, that would be the central bankers, U.S. government, and Israel. Netanyahu rehashes false claims about Iran's nuclear energy program, that they're this close to building a nuclear bomb. Israel, the United States have been saying this for over 20 years. On this page from this report, I listed again going back to 1992, 1995, 1997, 1998, all stating that Iran is 5 years out in making a bomb. And every couple of years, they keep using the same thing. And it's been over 20 years, and we haven't seen their bomb. And they just continually say this over and over. And if you want to read, I did it in one of my a couple episodes back, but if you want to read it, I have all the dates. It goes all the way up to 2011, and it talks about how many times they say that they have weapons of mass destruction. They're this close to making the nuclear weapon. They have the parts. They have the capability. They're 1 month out. They're 2 years out. They're 5 years out. And I mean, this is going way back. So what they're doing is they're pushing the war agenda. They're trying everything and anything to get it started. Just the other day, Israel was saying that, if Syria keeps provoking, that Israel is going to take action. All they are doing is setting the stage for war. Just like the United States government was saying that Syria is using weapons of mass destruction, which would be the chemical weapons, just like Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which they never found. They're using the same tactic, but it's not working. The American people, Congress, have no interest in invading at this time. But since the American people and Congress have no interest, they're going to make interest by creating some type of an event to bring us into war. And this will wake up the people of America. It will wake up Congress, because it will be bloody, it will be horrific, and something terrible will happen. Okay, let's move on here. Sweden proposes a Nordic battalion force plan. Now, a potential joint Nordic battalion force will be on the table when defense ministers and commanders from Sweden, Finland, Norway, and Denmark meet to discuss the Swedish proposal this fall. And it would function as a regional force, and it could be used for crisis management. It could be used for defense. It could be used for any type of situation that they need it. And it looks like every single country is getting prepared in some way or another. Okay, let's move on here. Now, the United States, and I've said this a couple episodes back, but they are using the Philippine island for their to bring their assets into there because it's right next to China. And what they're doing is they are using the Philippines uh, to have a presence in this area. And the what the Philippines will receive 6 river patrol boats from the U.S. Navy. 4 of 12 FA-50 fighter jets will also be delivered to the Philippine military. And the other things, the other gifts that they will be getting are radar systems, anti-sub helicopters, amphibious assault vehicles, and anti-craft guided missiles, and also around 345 million to modernize their whole base and everything over there. So, we're making it very nice for them, and this goes on to say that the Basis Access Accord will have the effect of a permanent U.S. military facility in the guise of rotational deployments and interoperability. And of course, this is what the U.S. says. Oh no, we just want to have a rotation military force there. But what they're actually doing is they're setting it up, and eventually, when the time comes, that will be a base of operation. Okay, let's move on here. Now, the Amash Amendment was defeated, and the House has defeated the Justin maybe Amash Amendment, that would have drastically curbed a national security problem that collects the phone records of millions of Americans. And right now, the NSA is permitted to spy on every single person. And the president went on to say, however, we oppose the current effort in the House to hastily dismantle one of our intelligence community counterterrorism tool. This blunt approach is not the product of an informed, open, or deliberative process. We urge the House to reject the Amash Amendment and instead move forward with an approach that appropriately takes into account the need for a reasoned review of what tools can be best secure the nation. And really, this is completely against the Fourth Amendment. It violates our rights to privacy, and the president, the government, they need to spy on every single American. They need to account for everyone. They need to put them into groups. They need to make these groups and create these lists so when the time comes, they know who to round up and who not to. This is what the Germans did back in World War II, and it made it much easier for them to go out and get those people. And the same thing will be happening here, and this is why they are not going to stop the spying. Now, the Pentagon is going to deploy huge blimps over Washington, D.C. for a 360-degree surveillance. And it goes on to say, a pair of high-tech Army blimps is coming to the greater Washington, D.C. area, and soon they will be able to provide the military with surveillance powers that spans hundreds of millions of acres from North Carolina to Niagara Falls. And once these blimps are above the nation's capital, it will allow the Army to see for 320 miles in any direction for 10,000 feet above the earth. The system can be set up to operate on its own for an entire month without requiring refueling, and offers the Pentagon surveillance capabilities that dwarf other options at penny on the dollar. And what these things do and what they're saying that they need this for is it enables commanders to defend against threats including hostile cruise missiles, low-flying manned and unmanned aircraft, tactical ballistic missiles, large caliber rockets, and moving surface vehicles such as boats, launchers, automobiles, and tanks. Now, why are they doing this? Because this will be our way of life. These blimps will be across the country when the collapse comes, or if they get the war started and the war gets started. These blimps will have a two-purpose role, to detect what they were saying, but then also to keep an eye on everyone, because these blimps are also equipped with the appropriate lenses to wage sophisticated surveillance missions, and they're able to see down to street level. And these will be very effective, and we will see these blimps all over the place. They'll be monitoring everything that goes on, every move everyone makes, and they will always be watching everyone all the time, everywhere, nonstop. And this is what they're trying to do. And we will see this very soon. Okay, let's move on here. Now, there is a new threat, a cyber attack threat by the Is Adin al Qassam cyber fighters are threatening banks with a new wave of distributed denial of service attacks. And Al Qassam has taken responsibility for a series of cyber assaults that have plagued some of the nation's largest banks, shuttering the online banking operation of Wells Fargo, PNC, Bank of America, Citibank, that we saw, which they reported on all last year. And here we go again, where the Al Qassam says, but this time it's going to be different. We're just not going to hit them with the denial of service. We're going to do more damage. And you'll feel this in the coming days. And this report goes on to say Al Qassam's latest threat come less than a week after Quantum Dawn 2, and that was a drill that the banks took to simulate a cyber attack on the bank. And here they had a drill. Now all of a sudden, Is Adin al Qassam cyber fighters are threatening the banks. And like I said in my other reports, I do believe that something will happen, some type of cyber attack. I don't know about the main event one yet. They might use this during the fall to hit the banks. They might do a small one right now to show that it can be done. And I believe that they're going to hold this off until the fall, but we'll see what happens. This way, they can, they'll say that, the first part of the crash, the collapse, I should say, in the fall, they can blame it on another country, and either Syria, to bring us into war as a false flag, or just to say they hit us and this is what caused the collapse. It had nothing to do with the Fed, had nothing to do with money printing, had nothing to do with President Obama's policies or the government's policies, and we can definitely see this happening. Now, something very interesting in Florida Airport, which is, it wasn't Miami, it was Opa-locka Airport, and there was a strange container that was unsealed, and it had traces of uranium inside, but the report was very vague, and they evacuated the area, and it was depleted uranium. And from other reports a while back, there were reports that a lot of their radioactive material had gone missing, but I haven't heard any more as the time I'm doing this, any more on this. And if any other information does come up or somebody knows anything about it, you can post it to the people, write me an email, and this way we can see what's going on. Listen, everyone, I really want to thank everyone for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.